Okay, everybody, here we go for the real class. Before we go too far, I do want to, wrong button to push, Eric. I do want to point out that the file is class download House at Night. The PDF is in handouts under House at Night. That's the name of this project. Okay, and the handout, which is on the wrong screen, is a step-by-step instruction. Once again, the idea behind this is we're going to make a complete thing here. We're going to take all the information that we've covered so far through the semester, because we've hit the halfway point at this point, and we are going to go ahead and really put something together. I made the PDF files. I've also added some extra things for tonight because I think I'm going to go faster than we would take in the normal evening. But basically, I have a series of files. I've got a that did not open up the way I wanted it to. Okay, I got a PDF of this. We got storm clouds. We've got sound effects. We got the whole 9 yards here. One of the things I'm going to do, which is not as part of the handout, because normally I would not have time in class to do this, is I made an extra version of the PDF file. If you recall, PSD, Photoshop file, is if you accidentally, there we go. If you just import the folder like I did on the left-hand side here, what happens, of course, is it flattens the image. So if you want to bring it in all the layers, you don't import it as footage, you import it as a composition. Once you import that, and of course ask you, are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, that's why I did this. I have to ask the questions twice. So what happens, magnifier, is I get a composition here. All the layers are placed into their own folder. So those are the 3 layers that make up this composite, the original PDF, PSD. I'll get it right tonight, honestly. So if I were to go to the original file, okay, which is this guy here, even though it's called the composition, it's actually not, because it doesn't have the files in it. So I'm going to grab the comp that I want. I've made a composition already, which is set up wrong. So we're going to just go composition, new composition, NTCS DV. I call this one the stage. And I'm going to make this 10 seconds long. And then I'm going to grab that comp, the Photoshop file that I made into a comp, drag and drop it. Now notice that this thing is huge. My goodness gracious, that is much larger. Well, there's a reason for this, is we're going to actually use a camera and move around in it. So this little box is going to be moving inside this great space. So then I want to point this out for the simple reason is, yeah, you can put in different sizes, if it hasn't been obvious, into a composition. Composition doesn't care. If it's a small file, then it shows up as a postage stamp in your comp. If it's big, it just overflows it. Now, besides the house at night, I also want to put in the storm clouds. There we go. And I also want to put in the dead tree. I got 2 versions of this. One of them is smaller than the other, which is that guy right there. Okay, now we're going to make this 3D. If you recall from the past 2 classes, is you just simply hit the little cubies right there, and that makes all the layers 3D. Okay, I'm going to fit up to 100%. So I have my layers here. I've got the storm clouds, I've got my house, and I got this tree. Now, some of these are look like pretty ugly Photoshop files. That's okay. This is one of those, do you need to make them the size adjustment to fit in Photoshop? Well, the thing is, now next week we'll talk about prepping files for Photoshop, by the way. In this case, I'm intentionally having them as oddball sized sizes because the handout, it means you're going to have to deal with them. But I want to point out that these are all exactly on top of each other, even though it's 3D. So instead of looking, if I looked at the top view, you can see that these guys are all literally on top of each other. It may look like the tree, this tree is behind the house, but that's only because it's under this layer. If I were to bring this forward, this is what you would get. Okay. Now, of course, you know, the handout talks about that, and then it talks about moving these. Now, the one thing I do want to point out, and I make this underline down here, is you may want to make adjustments to the numbers I give you. Okay. Do not make there, if it looks bad, if you don't like it, change the numbers. Okay. All right. So speaking of those crazy numbers and stuff, let's get started. First and foremost, we're going to deal with position. Okay. So I just selected all the layers, hit P, brought positions for all of them. The storm clouds are our back. That's our back wall. We don't want anything to go beyond that point. I don't have to throw it really super far back. I'm just going to do it back a little bit. And I'm going to make it 150 pixels back. Not much, but a little bit there. The old house in the field, I'm going to just move it back ever so slightly. 25 pixels. As a matter of fact, all these I'm going to do this mixer because my handout. 200. 200. House at night, I'm going to rearrange to 470. 260. And 25 back. The tree itself in the front, like I said, I made two versions. This is actually a smaller one. The handout's for the bigger one. And it doesn't, you know, it wants to be reduced. This one doesn't have to be number 2. But we do want to make sure that's in the right place. So we're going to do that 3. We're going to move that a little bit to the left. Right, 80 by 200. That may be a little too high. We'll see. You want to drop that down just a hair. And we're going to actually keep that tree. We're going to bring the camera forward, minus 130. There we go. Now the reason for the tree, this guy here, is to give us that motion of parallaxing, as I've talked about in other things. Things that are closer to the camera move faster. It really gives the sense of depth. Okay. Now to make sure that these numbers are right and everything looks good, the next step is actually to put in a camera. So we're just going to go layer new, camera. We don't want a super wide lens, so 35 millimeter is fine. Camera 1's good. The defaults are all wonderful. I'm going to say okay to that. Notice, of course, now that we're on the camera 1, everything's shifted a little bit because of the perspective. I'm now going to go to 2 views, and you actually get to see what I'm talking about. Now, when I move the camera right, left, you'll notice that there's a couple of problems here. One is my background is not quite what I really want. That's my storm clouds there. Okay. Mainly because it doesn't fill the entire void. And also I have the issue of, I got a big blank spot there on the right-hand side. So one of the things I can do real simply is go to scale. Just gonna make it a little, and I'm on the tree. Don't do that. Let's set scale on the actual scale. That's proportional. But I'm also going to want to slide it a little bit to the right. Because when I look at it, it's almost the exact same size now as my tree background. So now when I look at this with my camera, that's looking a lot better. The other thing that I might want to judge, which is not on the handout with the storm, is are there better clouds at different points here? Don't want to go too low. So you want to, play with it a little bit. How did I move the camera? The camera is moved quite simply. It has, just like any other object, the left, right, up, down, X, Y, Z arrows here. When you grab the arrows, and I put them right on top of like the red one, which I know is X, it moves the camera perfectly straight. And that is my friend, as it were, to be able to move something like that. If I want to move it forward, backwards, etc. If I just randomly grab my camera without grabbing the little arrows, then I have a problem is I'm going to create distortion. Now, one of the things that's problematic with that is because these are flat objects, the moment I do this kind of tilt and pan, the jig is up. The audience is going to see that these are flat. The fact that we are just using Photoshop files. Okay, everybody hang in there for a split second. It says my internet connection is unstable all of a sudden. If I lose you for any reason whatsoever, I will try to reestablish Zoom connection. Okay, so don't go away. We will try this. Okay, with the camera in place, I now have some decisions to make of what the camera moves are. Clearly, the way I set this up is I want the camera to move from left to the right-hand side. The question from the chat room is, so this type of layering is good only for pans? Yeah, basically. Once you have flat files, it's really hard. You can do zoom ins, and we're about to make one of those. But you want to keep the camera at 90-degree angles, unless it's like text or something. If I were to make a 3D object like the dice that we did last class, then I can move the camera around because it really is a 3D object. I could have made a house, a 3D object, which would solve that. But for what we're doing here tonight, that's not necessary. Okay, so the thing that you want to keep in mind when you're doing these pans right and left is your edges. Okay, if you go too far to the right or too far to the left, you're going to see the edges of those photographs and, of course, blank, which are two things you definitely do not want to do. So instead, I'm going to do a pan from left to right. So I want to start like over here about. I'm going to close all my other layers temporarily, and then I'll have that. And the two things I want to control are the points of interest, which is where it controls the pans and tilts, and the position, the left-right movement of the camera. I want these two to always be in sync for this. So I start at 0, 0, 0 at the far left-hand side of my camera, my scene, excuse me. And I'm now going to pan it to the net. Before I do anything else, I've got to move the plane needle forward, and I'm going to move it to about 6 seconds. I'm then going to move the camera to the far right. I don't want to go too far because I really want that house to be the center of attention. So I'm going to do that. As you can see, the motion path for the camera is just a straight line, left to right. Let's go ahead and just hit play. And of course, didn't click on the right place. Try that again. And you can see how that dead tree of the foreground really does help sell it. All right, so I'm going to go forward another few seconds. Now, the next decision to make camera-wise is what story are we telling? This is the sort of thing which is known as an establishing shot. You've seen establishing shots on millions of TV shows, particularly sitcoms and things like that, where they show a house or a building, and then suddenly they zoom in on it. Why do you do that? Because you're telling the audience, you're establishing this is where we are, and then they dissolve into a set. Living room, depending upon where my set was, starting. But for this, I'm going to focus on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go here and push forward. Get reasonably close to it. Notice, of course, my problem is it's not high enough, which is going to be, well, I'm going to take the Z, no, I want Y. There we go, Y. X, Y. I'm going to move it down. Okay, so that's more or less centered. This is the sort of thing when you're trying to replicate this project, you're going to want to play with. There's lots of different camera moves in this. There's no right answer, as long as you don't start seeing the edges or things look really wonky. So let's play that back, see what we think of that. This is a lot of trial and error. This is where the artistic side of things come in. Now that does happen a little fast. Maybe we'll move over the middle section to 5 seconds. Okay, you know, it's one of those things is we're doing this for practice. Not great, not bad. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But you can always come back later and make tweaks and adjustments. For what we're doing tonight, that's actually not too shabby. That's a pretty good camera move. Okay. Now, one of the things I do want to point out is I'm going to go back to just one view. There we go. See the whole thing moving and stuff. Let's make it a little bit bigger. See what it looks like at full screen. Not too bad. Okay, the next thing after getting that camera moved the way you want it, the next thing we're going to do is actually play with the storm clouds in the back. We could do a very, very simple animation left-right. Okay, but I'm going to, in my handout, I suggest doing actually something different. What we're going to do is actually create a distortion on this layer to give the sense of the clouds not just moving, you know, moving in a more organic way. So under Effects, Distortion, there's a thing called CC Power Pin. Now, CC Power Pin literally puts little handles at the corner of each piece of artwork. So for example, if I were to hit the crosshairs up here, it would allow me to easily grab. And what it does is it literally lets me do these massive distortions, like so. And if I choose the right hand one, I can, as you can see, really different look and feel. Now, if I were to do this, animate this, and that's of course my goal, is I gotta be careful because I could move this one from left to right, but that becomes part of the camera move then. So let me go ahead and just animate that real fast. Left, right. I'm going to want to animate this through the whole thing. All right, so I don't want to do that because I just did a massive distortion by mistake. Get the letter U, there's my keyframes. Oh. Don't want the bottom ones. And you also have to be careful is because that whole layer is moving from your camera perspective, you'll get something else. So actually I want to position this about halfway through here where I can see the clouds and still see my pins. And if I just move this from left to right, left side to the right side, what does my clouds look like once I get them going? You can see how that's vastly different than just having it move left or right or up or down. As a matter of fact, that move makes it look like the cloud is moving away from the house. Now, that may or may not be what you want to achieve. It's really a wild question. Now, I could also animate in the other one to give a more swirling motion. Let's see how that one looks. Now, yes, people will point out, but it stopped. Well, that's because these last keyframes are there. By spreading them all the way to the end, I can now slow down the process. But it allows me to quickly see what kind of motion I'm getting from the CC corner pin. And it looks like the clouds are bubbling up. That may or may not be what I want. This is where our creativity and stuff, you sit there and you try these things. Don't take forever to do these things, but you may want to. The other beauty of filters is the famous reset button, which puts it all back to normal. So let's zoom out here. Let's try it again. Top left, top right. Select that. Start it up there. Choose the right one. Start it over here, perhaps. Now maybe I'll do a more subtle movement this time. Just get to the 5-second mark. Let's see what that more subtle movement looks like. That may have been too subtle. What do you guys think? Not what we want. Yes, you can always delete a filter. Just highlight the name of it and hit delete on your keyboard. Now, the other thing is we could also hit reset again. Oops, delete those keyframes. Let's go back there. Okay, there we go. Back to the beginning is we could do it the other direction, have it move against type. There we go. There's that. Choose the right one. In this case, we'll let the clouds go the other direction. See what we think of that one. You can see why this project takes the rest of the evening, almost the entire evening. So this will create a swirl in the other direction. Back to the beginning. It's a little compromise. It's a little subtle between the two of them and stuff. Yeah, I think the subtlety is working on me. I'm even going to slow it down by putting it at the very end. Let's see how that looks for the whole thing. So what do you guys think of that one? Is that a keeper, or should we keep trying to come up with more clouding swirls and stuff like that? Okay. Now I'm going to do a little shift here, a little change. It's only 7:30, so we got lots of time still. Okay. Notice that these are all, stop that. These Photoshop files are all, just standard, I downloaded them off the internet type of things. But we want to do a nighttime, make this look like nighttime. This is where we refer to shooting day for night. And it's where you actually, it's cheaper to shoot during the day. So therefore we take our cameras out, shoot daylight, and make it look like nighttime. Do that through filters and other purposes. Now I'm going to take a detour here for a second. This is one of the handouts I have. So everybody get to their chat window, because I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to do a little basic color theory real fast. This is a very abbreviated version. Okay, colors are a very powerful tool. Color correction is used to fix problems and matching shots, but also we use it to, set mood and change the look and feel of the movies. But to start with, we got to go to the very basics. What are the prime colors? Okay, everybody, into your chat window. What are the prime colors? Max is actually coming in the closest to this. Actually, that's a trick question, people. There's actually more than the prime colors. When you were when you're mixing inks together and stuff, yeah, this is what you learn in elementary school: red, blue, and yellow. Those are your prime colors for mixing inks and stuff. However, if you're going to do printing, it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If you're talking computer screen, it's RGB, red, green, blue. Okay, so that's why that was a trick question. It depends upon what you're doing. So it's something to keep in mind, okay? Because if I'm doing something in Photoshop, I'm going to be seeing it in red, green, blue, but it's going to print out in cyan, magenta, yellow, black. This is why in Photoshop you would change the way the colors are mixed to make sure you get closer to what you see on the computer screen. And this is also why things on a computer screen never look like the way they print out. Just something to be aware of. And it's never like real ink, oil paintings and things like that. The other terminologies that you have to be used to when you're doing color is the term saturation. This is, of course, meaning that how much of the color is in there. 100% saturated means 100% of that shade, be it red to green to blue, whatever. And less saturated means that, and people say, it's how much white it is. Well, it's, how much color versus how much white, okay? So less saturated, the more white you see in the color. The other term you need to know is value. The value is how much black is in the color. Again, 100% saturation. This is one of the reasons why the color square in Photoshop is set up the way that it is. Okay, when we're doing color with TV sets, not all TV monitors, cameras can see the full color range. This actually shocks a lot of people. Okay, is your monitor may see millions of colors, but it can't see all of them. So when you're doing video, you gotta be careful about that little fact. There's a term called keeping the video colors safe. And there's tools to ensure that, to make sure you don't have something that your monitors cannot actually create. How do you know if the color is good? There's a very series of tools. This is a much more longer conversation, but basically of scopes and things like this. This is the old Final Cut scope, which was always very handy, which mixed together the value, the histogram, your vector scope, and things like that, telling you how much color is put together. Vector scopes can also be external tools as well that set up how the color is put together and how it's mixed together. The waveform shows you how much white versus how much black is in the thing, in your overall image. And then almost every video tool has a three-way color thing that allows you to adjust the lower end blacks, higher things, and the mids. And of course, then you have sliders for how bright things are in those sections. So for example, you can take the original, if you just do brightness and color contrast, you get something that looks like this. with a three-way color corrector, you can see how you can keep the blacks black. You'll notice that if you just use brightness contrast filters, it washes everything out, comparatively speaking. So this is why we have controls over the blacks, the mids, and the whites to keep everything in sync and give us nice, crisp, sharp looks and feels. You can see much more detail than even the original or the brights. The other thing that we do nowadays with color is quite simple, is to create a style. Now my examples here are a few years out of date. I apologize for that. But for example, if you go back and watch on reruns any of the old CSI shows, there were three of them. There was the original Las Vegas one, which is the upper left, CSI Miami, and then they had the shorter run CSI New York. But each of these had a different color palette. CSI Las Vegas was normally set at the evenings because it's Vegas, baby. And it went to the blue tones. Notice how much blue and light in that. CSI Miami went the other direction. They went yellow to orange, to the point at which a lot of their shots were like so unrealistic. It's like, that's not real. That drove me nuts. I could never watch the show. New York went very interesting. They went to high contrast where they had both bright and darkness, you know, sort of 50-50 split. Because you'll see how evenly lit this is, except for the highlight on his back. But you can see how the black and white is done. Is any one of these right or wrong? No, it depends upon what style, what mood you're trying to put together. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. Take an original shot like this, shot in broad daylight. Guy with a gun, we're doing something creepy here. What do? We can add in filters and play with it a little bit. And you can see the difference in the mood between these two shots. Radically different from each other. Again, here's another example of what we're about to do. Day for night. We shot this car. Look over here. That's what the audience sees. You can tell that there's a radical difference, obviously. But these are the sort of things that we can do to save ourselves a lot of time, money. I'm not saying this is fast or easy, but I'm just letting you know. One of the reasons you can almost always tell 99% of the time a day for night shot is look at the shadows. Because the shadows, you know, if there's a strong shadow, unless there's a strong light, which this is not, it's just one of those things that you can't get around, but most people don't notice that. And finally, the simple things we can do with After Effects is go out and shoot. God, that's an ugly day. No, forget that. Let's put a nice blue and clouds in the background, right? These are the fun things we can do because that's easy to get that color out of there. Now we're getting a step closer to green screening at this point, but you know, make the shot yours. You don't have to make, you know, just live with what you got. You can enhance it in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, you can download that simple PDF from the Canvas website. So what we need to do here is turn this into day for night. Now, option one is, if you recall, all filters must be what? Must be on a layer. Question from the chat was, is color correction the same thing as color grading? Color grading is part of color correction. Okay, color correction is the overall umbrella, and color grading is something that fits inside of that. Okay, so give me a minute here, okay, as we start playing with this. Anyhow, option number one, by the way, is we could put in a new layer, adjustment layer. Adjustment layers allow us to put filters on these, and it impacts every filter. So for example, I'm just going to put in a real simple. This is going to be an over-the-top example, but I'm going to put a tint filter onto this thing. Notice that the entire thing turned to black and white because the tint is designed to take color and put things in black and white. Adjustment layers, on the other hand, also affect everything down. So if this is the top, every single layer is affected. If I were to move this down here, if I have it below the house, you'll notice the problem is the tree was just too black and white to begin with. I've got a color house in black and white things. So where you put the adjustment layer for filters really does play a mighty huge role. Okay, but the problem with doing it this way is that adjustment filter, again, is impacting everything equally. What if you want to change the controls, make things a little bit different? So instead of doing that, we're going to put a filter on each and every single one of these layers. I'm going to start with the old house at night because it does have the most color on it. Okay. And again, I'm going to get into here. There's a split. Here's the day for night sequence. I'm going to go put this onto my other screen so I can read it while you guys are doing that. But here's my first question again, everybody into the chat. Think about this for a second. What does nighttime color look like before we get any further? Okay. Bluish. That's not a bad answer. Cools. I'm not even sure what navy means. Grays. Okay, first things first is you have to think about it. You know, let's do this logically. At nighttime, there is less light, correct? So there's going to be less saturation. The way human beings see things with their eyes is light hit things or light comes out of someplace and then hits our eyes. The more light there is, the more colors we see. So the first filter we're actually going to go into is one called hue and saturation. So we're going to go effect, color correction, and come down and find hue and saturation. This allows us to change the colors, but what we're really interested in over here is how much, again, getting into, remember that saturation we were talking about and value, how much white and how much black is in the shot. So by lowering the saturation, we're going to be bleeding off color. So right, see, that's every color pixel turned up to 100% saturation. No, we're not doing alien film here, so we're going to bring that back down. Nighttime, much less. So my recommendation is to actually drop that down into the like, you know, minus 60 or so. Again, this is not a precise number. This is artistic leanings where you get to make a decision here. And how much light do we want to take out of this? So if we drop, again, if we made it super bright, wrong, move it down. So we're going to want to probably drop this down to, see how it's getting darker and darker. Let's try minus 40. That was my handout suggestion. Again, very flexible. You see how washed out that already looks? So that's a good place to start. The next thing is, close the whole thing. We're going to go in and add curves. Curves is your most powerful friend. You can do, of course, levels, but you really want to, curves will just give you, color correction, mix the wrong one, curves. Gives you the most thing. This is what's out of Photoshop itself. So what I really want to do here is I want to sort of drop down again how much light I'm giving into this. There we go, dropping down. The way curves work is an XY. This is the input, meaning that if it gets 25% of a color here, right now because of the straight line, it outputs 25%. So 1 for 1, 50%, 75%, 100%. But by grabbing the RGB control, which is the whole thing, and dropping it down, now when I hit here, which used to be the 25%, it's only giving out 10%. What used to be 50% is now 25%, which should be 75%, is less than 50%. And at 100%, I'm only getting 50% of the color output. So you can already see how washed out and stuff, and also you can tell this tree really looks weird now. Okay, so based on that, we can actually now start doing color tinting. So as people point out, our eyes tend to shift things blue. This is where we want it to, just a little too blue. Now this again is an extraordinarily artistic thing. Do you want, whoa, that's wrong. Undo is your friend. How much salty? I've had some students make this project and they decide to go, instead with a horror flair, they go with apocalyptic, make everything red and purples and in the worldish type of thing. And we can also do reds in the sense of is we can bring down the reds to increase the blue tint because we're doing a subtractive process here. For example, if I drop down the, you can see how as I drop the red, we go into the blues and greens. So we're just going to come down here. That sort of looks good. You can get the idea. Now the advantage of this is quite simple. Is I now have the two filters in here. I can select both of them. I can copy them. Edit, copy. I can now paste them, so I can put that onto the dead tree. Yes, I can do keyboard commands, but this is visual. Paste. Now that tree looks a lot better, doesn't it? And I can put that onto the storm clouds as well. And I did do a cut and paste. Now let's see how this looks. Now notice how the whole thing has slowed down immensely. Okay, I want to draw your attention to two things before I go any further. One is this green line here. And the second is in the upper right-hand corner. When I hit play again, you're going to see above the preview here, a red line of text. Okay, what's happening is I have given the computer so much information. Even though my computer is reasonably fast and has a fairly good video card, it cannot process what I've given it. I've given it too much information. So it has to slow down, and it's basically rendering every pixel on the screen one at a time, and it's making them a very small file. But to do so, it's slowing down the speed of what I'm seeing. Yes, it's also in full preview mode, which I was going to talk about next. So it's not until the green line is solid is the entire preview file been made. And then on the next pass, the next time you see it, you'll see what the audience speed-wise will see. Let me hit play real fast here. You can see up here, see it's like, this is not in real time. It's warning you in the upper right, and it's like, no kidding. So don't assume this is the speed that's going to happen. This is just merely in our computer to adjust everything. So let it finish. And the more we ask the computer to do, the longer that will take. Almost there, and we're about to see real time. Sorry, pop-ups, go away. Yes, yes, go away. Okay, now, personally, I think that's a little too bland, the whole thing. Had we put all those filters onto an adjustment layer, everything would look the same. I think instead, for the clouds in particular, I think I'm actually going to brighten these up a little bit, because they would get more light. There we go. What do you think of that? So by going in and putting these filters on every layer, it gives us vastly more control. Okay, so you can see, yes, it's an extra step, but boy, it gives us so much more. Okay, I'm looking over chat now. I had a whole series of questions I ran over. What kind of video card do I have? Actually, I'm just using the board processor at the moment. Before the coronavirus hit, I actually bought a new computer, but I've not had a chance to. Yes, I'm sitting at home, but I haven't gotten the new board and stuff all set up, but it does the job. Do clients watch previews or exported files? Unless it's a savvy client, export the files, for God's sakes. You do not want them to see, the moment they start seeing little flaws like that slowness, it freaks them out. So I don't recommend that. And you're liking it. It's nice and spooky. So, again, like I said, I started off with the decision, I'm doing a horror film. Ta-da. And that's what I'm getting here. So I'm starting to get that going and stuff. Now, the other things that's not in my handout, but which could be fun, of course, is now that I have my filter there, I can actually, for example, take that dead tree, one at the beginning here, and duplicate it. Because, hey, I've got all the filters on it, so I don't have to fix it twice. So I can actually move it Too far. Where'd you go? Let's try that again. So what I'll do is I can put that in the beginning. Position. I'm going to create a distortion with it. First, I'm going to move it back. Don't move too far back. Why? Because it can go behind the clouds. Remember Z space. Matter of fact, I should point out this point. Going back to the top view, that gives me the chance to see how far back I make this. And I don't want to make it too far back because you might see that it has no root. I do want to create a distortion on it. So I go to scale. I'm going to break this because I don't want to look exactly like the same tree. A little skinnier. Matter of fact, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the edge here and flip it. And then I'm going to slide it over so it's actually only a fraction in my screen. I did move it back, so let's see how that looks. Fit to window. There we go. Oh, the other thing is that rendering time is right now. This with this drop down means is that the computer is deciding how fast or how slow to do that render time. If I lower the quality, it will go faster, but of course, you know, I still have to wait for that green line to happen. So hit play. Too shabby. You can see how adding in extra trees and stuff gives you that much more sense of depth. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to actually duplicate that again. Slide it to the far side. So I have something hanging out here. Now in that case, I think I'm going to add a little extra. Let's get the whole thing up. Bring it forward. I don't want to interfere with the house, the image too much. You can see how I'm trying to position it so it's not blocking the house and it doesn't hurt my camera move. But look at how neat that is going fly-bying it. So, okay, let's render that out. By adding in those extra trees, you can see how I get a really nice little animation that really works. I'm actually digging it toward the end there where you get the one branch and the clouds are moving as you move in toward the house. Look at this. Really get a sense of movement there. Okay, so how do we bring this to life? That's what the next step is all about. I'm looking at the clock and it's almost 8 o'clock. And I have not given you a break, and I apologize for that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a 15-20 minute break. Get back here about 8:15. At which point we're going to add lightning, sound effects, rain, and a whole bunch of other things to continue to bring this live. Excuse me. Sorry, Max. It's up to you whether or not you have a donut in your house. I cannot have you download it. But if you get DoorDash, you can probably have it by the end of class. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to hit play first. I'm going to pause the recording. The question was asked, you know, dealing with the camera. Once again, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to do 2 views. I have the camera right here. And I only have 3 sets of keyframes. The start positioned here. As we can see, it's just moving along left to right.
How do you even get the camera right there, though?
Okay. Well, basically, you know, starting from the beginning, obviously. Hold on a second. The toolbar for zoom is in my way. Okay, the camera's obviously started by going layer new, inserting in there. The camera will always, you know, just show up. From this point, the camera itself has the XYZ of the red, green, blue arrows, which allows you to, oops, to set.
I went to layer and then like got the camera, but it didn't show up.
Did you get did the box pop up for the camera settings?
Yeah, that did.
Did you accidentally hit cancel instead of okay?
Let me check. Nope, I did hit okay.
It's also very, check for, okay, first thing to check is the drop down view. Can you see where it would say like camera 1 or camera 2 or something like that?
Is that, yeah, I see that.
Does it have a camera 1?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, that means that you do have it on your screen. You just can't see. It's in a location you cannot see.
Huh. So if I zoom out really far?
Yeah, so you want to hit the camera layer to make sure that will give you the triangle of the view of it. And let's zoom out. Because it's got to be there somewhere. If it's, you know, in the drop-down menu.
I have the camera selected, but I've zoomed out as much as I can and I don't see it anywhere in the space.
Try opening up just a new composition, blank area. Nothing else, and just go layer new camera. That'll be fine.
And it's camera 1, a 2-node or 1-node camera? It was automatically selected on 2-node.
Yeah, 2-node's fine.
Okay.
Okay, and you have like the top view or left view or something?
It says active camera.
Okay, choose camera 1. That's the one you make. Then from the drop-down menu, choose like top, left, right. If you have that selected to only show camera, then you're literally looking outside the lens of the camera.
Wait, where do you get the top, down, right?
Across the bottom of the viewer.
Oh, there we are.
So you want to.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, the camera appears now when I hit top view.
Right. What I suspect is you had camera 1 or active camera chosen, and you're looking through the lens of the camera. Of course, it's not going to show up or you're not going to see it.
That makes sense. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions before we begin? Because it's now 8:15. Okay. All right, everybody. Since it's 8:15, go ahead and give me a here, present, or something through the chat real fast. Donuts. I actually got a one-track mind. Anyhow. Now, the next thing to do, by the way, in this, I mean, this is not a bad setup. I mean, that's a perfectly good shot. Now, if we used higher res photographs, spent more time building the house in 3D and doing all these other things, we could do fancier things. But again, I'm just trying to put together all the things we've covered so far in the semester to give you an idea how to make everything work. After Effects is not just doing a thing and saying you're done. It's putting all these layers together, putting everything, little pieces to add new shots. For example, to make this even a little bit more interesting, or actually, I should ask, you guys ready to start again? I guess the here's, we'll do that. we're going to actually add in, now in class, I would like often start with like audio, but I won't drive you guys nuts with that. We'll add that last. But for example, say I want this to be a rainy night, which is really good for a horror flick. So for that, I am actually going to put in an adjustment layer. Why? That's going to hold my rain. I'm just going to put in, I'm going to use my little search box here and just type in the word rain. And there actually is a CC rainfall. With that, I drop it onto my adjustment layer. And this is the one time where I want all of my layers to see the same thing. I don't want the rain just happening behind the house. I want it everywhere. So therefore, the adjustment layer goes at the top of the stack, just to make my life easier. And yes, you can make it 3D, but if you make it 3D, you run into the problem of, you know, that layer now is in Z space. But this is where one of those times where you can't get away with mixing and matching. The neat thing about the rain filter, by the way, is just the options. You can have it everything from simple drops, speed, wind variations. You can even change the color of the rain and stuff. I think that we're going to stick with just that. Let's see how that looks. Again, I'm going to go back to one shot, one view. 100%, that's good. And you can see just a steady downpouring of rain and stuff. Like I said, you can increase the wind speed. You can, you know, change the angle, make it coming in sideways variation to higher variation. Put in a high wind. Now you can see how the rain's coming in at weird angles and stuff. Oops, no, don't do that. You can make it look like anything you want. You can increase the size of the rain droplets and the randomness of them and things like that. For a simple filter, it really does a good job. I'm not sure if question from the chat is, should I increase the size of the rain when it zooms in? That's an artistic question. I don't think so, because the raindrops more or less stay the same, you know, throughout. You know, just because you get closer to the building doesn't mean that the drops get bigger. But that's, again, a different choice. We'll think on that one. That's a possibility, but again, let's think on that one. And when we get to the final, we made changes. Okay, next thing is I want to add lightning. I want a nice lightning strike, maybe right about there between the trees. That would really sweeten things up. Once again, I got to have a layer to do that, because I want to be able to control where it is and things like that. So I'm just going to go in and make a solid layer. And I'm going to make a shade of gray. Color doesn't really matter. Now, this is from experience. I can tell you the lightning filter gets rid of whatever layer you put it on. It takes over it entirely. So I'm just going to go in there. And from that, I am going to do this. And there's a thing called advanced lightning right there. I'm going to put on, watch what happens. See that solid gray there? And if you miss, that's not a good thing. I put it on the camera, not on that there. Oof. There's my lightning. Now my layer, of course, is 2D, so I'm going to make it 3D, which gives me a chance to move it around, push it back. Put the lightning where I want it. Go back to my two views. Gotta be careful about this one, because I'm going to need to actually scale that up. If I move back too far, of course, then that layer will be behind my clouds. And then everything vanishes. Boom. Space. Okay, I do need to make it a little bit taller because I want that lightning bolt all the way through there. Now the lightning works through what they call origin point and direction over in the controls, which is the start of the lightning at the top and the directions at the bottom. So if I move the origin point, I can have the lightning going from left to right or right to left. And this is, of course, is where is the strike happening? So get to the side. Now, in order to create the actual animation, you actually have to move one of these two things or make other changes to the filter. So I'm going to keyframe the direction, which is the bottom part there. And so hit the letter U, I open up that. Now, if I want to move only like a couple of frames, I can hit page up to go backwards, up the timeline, or page down. So I hit page down twice. That's literally 2 frames. Move this over right about there. I get that simple little animation. But the problem is the layer is on the timeline for the entire time. So what I also want to do here is make sure that layer is selected. If I hit, because I'm on a Windows machine, Control bracket, oops, Alt bracket, sorry. And then Alt bracket left, Alt bracket right. Left. Alt bracket right. Now look down my timeline. You can see that this is only here for a fraction of a second, but that is what lightning should do, right? So if I hit play, it even looked like a fairly good strike on the ground right there. Looked like it was hitting something in the back. And of course, to sell lightning, we also need sound effects. So I actually have a thunder wave here, which I like to put together with my lightning. Remember, it's LL to see the waveform. There it is. And with lightning, as you know, it's like, where do you hear the thunder afterwards? And the farther away you hear it. So do you want to hear it right away or not? This is where because we move out shots so fast, I may want to have it a little earlier. It's not bad. I could even add another lightning strike over here, but I think I'll just keep it simple. Just have the one. And keep in mind, you can also play with the lightning filter stuff, make it less, vibrant, dull it down, do other things to it as well. But we'll keep that one the same. Matter of fact, actually, for the sound, I think it will. I'll try not to. I actually have some light rain sound effect. The thing about that, though, is again, is it actually fades in. So what I really want to do is I want to slide it over in my 10-second clip here. So the rain is coming solidly through the entire thing. Could I put the night layers? Yeah, I could play with it. I can add more to it, of course. But lightning should be bright at the night. Also, you get into what mood are you setting here? I'm sure putting the lightning in there to be a little bit more dangerous, implying the elements of danger and stuff. So I'm not sure I want to dim it too much. Now with the rain, you can hear that. Not a much more sellable shot. actually has a tremendous number of glowing effects, non-glowing effects, opacity, dropping it down a little bit more. Turbulence core settings. So you don't even need the other filters. I can just drop down the settings here. That makes it a little bit more realistic. Well, it's still pretty blue, but you get the idea. Now, if I wanted more thunder, obviously I can go back in here, go to levels, increase the bit, just adds a little bit more, and like that. Okay, so since we have more time, I did do a couple extra things here. Let's add a little bit more. Say, for example, we wanted to add a light into the upper window here. Okay, we want something flickering and things like that. Now, most people jump to the idea of just doing a simple, adding like a, let's go to a yellow color. Okay, too big, you mask it. By the way, the secret to getting that mask right is quite simply, remember opacity? I'm going to drop down the opacity way down. Now I can draw my mask the size I want it. But here's the problem with this method. First and foremost, the moment I make that layer 3D, boom, you can see way over here at the other side, that layer actually repositions itself in the XYZ world. And everyone goes, okay, Eric, you can then just grab that and move it over. But this becomes really tricky. Why? Because don't move too much there. Because this yellow has to be exactly where that window is. And once the camera moves, things get really weird and funky. Now, by actually having this pre-comped, the old house in the field, this is the original file. And what I did with it was I broke it into the house. Oops, they're all selected. The house, the upper window, and the grounds themselves. I actually broke this up into 3 different portions. So with the upper window controlled, I can make this all 3D. And I can then, with this positioning, I'm going to move back inside this composition. Move it back a little bit. Now, visually speaking, that doesn't make a big deal because that's just a grayed out window. You really can't see it any different. Probably scale that up just a hair. Oops. And I can add a tint to that. Back up here. Look at that, I got a nice yellow glowing window. Now this is where it gets interesting. Okay, so I've done that successfully. I go back to my finished thing. Look at that. Why is it yellow? Because I put all those other filters on it. But the neat thing about it is it does stay exactly where I put it. So I can go back into here. And I'm going to actually go into the opacity. I'm going to make it flicker. So I'm going to start with a opacity of 25%. Move it over a little bit. Back up to 75%, make it a little brighter. Use a random number there. Go back down to say 40%. Don't make it too bright. 403, thank you very much. Back up to 60. Okay, that's probably enough for what we want to do. So as you can, don't move it. I want to select all these things. And one of the things I can do real fast is just do a quick copy and paste. Now there's another way of doing this, which we'll get into in another class shortly, which is actually much faster and much easier. Let's take a look at that. There we go, flickering light in the thing. That's kind of nifty. Let's go back and see what it looks like in this thing. What do you guys think of that? Just adds a little bit more to it. Now, if I wanted to, I could even take this a step further. I actually have, I believe I imported it. Yeah, I got a silhouette of a man. It's black on black, so of course, let me put it above the house so you guys can see this. There we go. Clearly he's, basically I just did a Google search, found silhouette, found one I liked. I did it. Let's shrink them down. And if I do it too far, now I get that. That's probably 25. That's always a good number. Still 10%. This gets into how much of him I want to have going by. So there he is. Being a 3D layer, I can now place it between the house and the window. So when he moves, it's across like that. So I'm just going to do a very simple P for position. Now this is where you guys sit there and go, wait, when do I want that animation to happen? So you go back to the stage. And at about the 6-second mark, I think, you want him going by. So we go back to that.
It'd be creepier if you have him going backwards in the window.
Oh, walking backwards? Okay, let's try it this way first. That's kind of creepy. Okay, so he's going to go from, he's off camera. So we're going to make him walk past, we zoom in. So it's really slow, but that's okay. See what that looks like on the thing here. Too high in the window. It's almost at the ceiling. That's a fairly easy thing to move, of course. Okay. Put them in the range. Not too far, just drop it down. About there? Yeah, I think so. Nice even 4, 13. Keyframe. To keep him straight, I have to keep him. Okay. See what that looks like in the stage. And the thing about the green line is every time you make a change, animate this guy a little bit further. Right now he's just pretty vanilla. You know, we could animate a bump in him or something like that. But I'm going to show you something totally different because we have the time. To show you the next tool, and we'll come back to this guy, I'm going to make a new composition. Oh, I've already got an old composition. Here we go. One view. I need to import something. There we go. Now this has nothing to do with the house at night. This is something entirely different, but it does show a tool. This is a flat, you know, TIFF file. If I turn on transparencies, you'll see that it's like that. That's important, by the way, at this point. I'm going to be showing you a tool that's hiding up here, which is called the Puppet tool. Let me zoom in on this. This is a radical change of direction, but we got time for the evening. The Puppet tool actually looks like a push pin, and it then has various other things as well. But the push pin is the one that's really critical. The push pin allows you to create a very unique distortion. If you put a pin into him, like so, you can grab one of these things, and it creates a warping twisting. The more pins between the warp point and the rest of these, it sort of decreases in action. Notice that his foot way down here does not move as much as his ankle and everything else. So if you were to put in even more dots, you'd get almost each one stops the others from moving, like so. Now you don't want to go crazy with these things for the simple reason is you'll end up with like dozens of these things. And each pin you make, in the order you make them, are numbered. So like I said, if you put in too many, you'll go crazy. Now I'm going to intentionally do a over the wall animation here. The other thing that's kind of neat about this is if I hold down the control key, this will do animation for me. Notice when my play needle down below is moving while I'm moving this. And every time I make a move, it records the keyframes. And there are the keyframes. So when I hit play, and that's where I stop to talk, and then some more motion. Now, if you want to, of course, you can. If you go to, it's very easy to go way over the top. So you often go in and delete out keyframes or space them out to slow things down. And if you don't like any of them, you can, of course, hit the stopwatch and get rid of all of them. But always go back to where it was. There we go. And you can animate different things. For cartoon animation, obviously, it makes sense to be way over the top with this. So I can go like that, like that, like that. Go back to 0, 0, 0. I can then move his head on the other pin. Yeah, if you want a question from the chat, yes, if you want to automatically have the animation happen, you want to hold down the control. You see how it changes? It changes into a stopwatch. The little mouse pointer, that tells you you've got the right tool. The interesting thing about this, of course, is you can also do this with anything else. White on white on white. No. Where's my character? There it is. Where's my red leather? There we go. So with this letter H, I can use the puppet tool. Hold on my control key and make a dancing letter. Go back to the beginning. Let's do the other top of it. Whee! Now the other problem, now there is a drawback to this. The reason why this works is because there's a transparency going on here. There's an alpha channel, which we'll talk a little bit more about next week. If you had a solid image, say like the storm clouds, like so, because every pixel is touching every other pixel, then the cumulative puppet tool, while it does work, it becomes very bizarre. And yes, this is another way I could have destroyed my clouds in the other. But you can see how I'm like impacting everything, even warping it behind each other. Now, getting back to our house and our gentleman walking here, I have a lot of options here. I'm going to hide the house from view. Is I could have made him multiple layers. I could actually rotate the head and do this. But the other option is I could just simply, again, use the puppet tool. Couple of, and what I want to do is I want to come back to here. And this is where subtlety will really come in. And I have to be careful. Okay, because I might actually want to do this because I know that's pin 1. So I may do this manually. Let's hit play. That may have been too subtle. Oh, I think I hit the stopwatch broken. Actually, there's the better movement. Earlier in the shot. And if we bring back the house, see how that looks. I've seen people use the puppet tool, for example, of photographs of like birds and things in the background, and just give them a little motion to sell it. Let's try this from the beginning. Things we need to make sure we did. Anyhow, that's something that we need to really as you look at this, keep in mind that but with an audience by this, granted I've almost spent an hour or so working on it. I spent a lot more time. It's totally different. But a rough idea of what's going on, right? No, we have a question from the thing. Actually have him raise his head back up here. So. Oh, for reference, when the video is playing, you can't hear me? I'm not sure how to turn that on, down. Although I can, of course, turn off the rain. Thank you for the update. I really appreciate that. Okay, well, we don't really need the rain. So that gives us a nice little animation. Yeah. I'm not sure how to balance the sound between the two sources, but we can turn it off, yeah. You guys got the idea. Wish somebody had said something sooner. I'll have to listen to the video myself to see if that's the case. But can you see how we've taken all the things we've covered so far and started putting them together to bring together to make an entire shot? Only 10 seconds long, but that's pretty, reasonably convincing, don't you think? Okay, I didn't stop enough, I think, during the evening and ask questions. So let me turn the floor over to questions and stuff. What do you guys think? What, no questions for me, guys? Anyhow, the file folder has all these files in it. It doesn't have the silhouette man because I just decided to do that in spur of the moment. But you can easily find something similar to it as well. on YouTube and stuff. Also, I'd like to remind you that your Hollywood Bowl Jazz Festival projects are due next week. Okay. Yeah, the question that came up in the chat, it seems like it'd be easy and very controllable to place in video footage. Yeah, we could do green screen and somebody actually doing something there in the window. That'd be super easy. But, you know, again, I'm just trying to demonstrate for this purpose, since we haven't talked about green screens yet, you know, how you can add in just little bits. You know, you'd be shocked, professionally speaking, how many major motion pictures are made up of Photoshop files and stuff. Obviously, a much higher res than the ones that I'm using here. But, you know, not bad for a couple hours. No, there are no links at this point in time for the past jazz festivals. Although I think I record, didn't I? Now I'm confused because I think I did record that, and this is the movie number 3 in the links I sent out. It's not on my YouTube channel, but it is because we're violating media copyrights with it. But if you go to the Zoom link that I sent out 2 weeks ago. Okay. A couple questions here, so hold on for just a second. Okay, first question is actually, I'm going to do this, the newest question. I'll come back to you, Jonathan, in just a second. Okay, since it's based on the recordings are, remember I email out a link to every recording, although I'm fearful that Zoom may delete things. So I've also put them up on my YouTube channel, okay, which you guys can access. The YouTube channel, however, only has these sessions of me doing things, which, you know, has no music or anything, so I can't get my ass sued. So, but if you still have the links, I sent out emails to everybody, you can access the Zoom ones as long as they last. I've not found a good answer of how long Zoom's going to keep them up and running, but since I do have them on, you know, on my YouTube channel, you guys can access them no matter what Zoom decides to do. As for questions about music, yeah, you can use any music that you can download or get. Getting things up off of iTunes. iTunes is not very easy to get things off of, per se. I can't remember how to download them with their current. I stopped using iTunes years ago. Sorry. It's just not a very good piece of software. Although people have bought so much music with it, they're sort of stuck with it. Even Apple's moving away from it. But basically, you can just search. Google is your friend. You know, if you have the song already, just Google it. You can also download it as you can probably find it on YouTube and download the video from there and put it into your timeline. Just turn off the eyeball, so music only, not video. And also, I recommended archive.org, but there's also lots of other sources. If we still had access to the campus, I would say that we have sound files on the CMD server. But since you don't have that access, we're going to be kind of limited. Obviously, I'm not basing, oh. Show and finder, there you go. Thank you very much, Max, for answering the question. You know, there's a problem, there's so many softwares out there. You know, the other website I was recommending is archive.org. Has a lot of music and things like that in their public domain, or Creative Commons. So you can download that, things like that. But as for watching the older videos that I demonstrated, go to the last link from 2 weeks ago and hit the third one. I'm pretty sure I did that at the end of the evening and stuff. Okay. Next series of questions, anybody? Yes, we'll make you all good software pirates, grabbing the music that you want. So, yeah, actually, I should have thought of the old, yeah, right click on the thing. Want something off the internet, right click on it, hit download or save as. That works pretty much most of the time. Okay, anybody? So what do you guys think of this little house at night? It's radically different than the what we started with, isn't it? You know, yeah, the lightning looks a little cartoony, but you know, like I said, for something we're just throwing together in an hour or so, you know, not too bad, I think. Realistically, if I was trying to do something for, you know, realistic or close enough that I could sell into a low budget film, you know, I'd spend a week or so on this. Yep. As Jonathan says, yeah, it's you know, you can create a nice scene in a short time. Yeah, After Effects is amazing what you can do with it. Now, what we're going to do, like I said, we're at the midpoint of the semester. We're now going to actually dig deeper into a lot of the things I've already covered. I'm going to demonstrate some really powerful filters over time. We're going to do some Photoshop work next week, where I'm also going to be showing you lots of little weird things that After Effects does. So, for example, in the future classes, the classes will probably cover 3 radically different topics. Okay, they're not necessarily joined together, but it will give, you know, you can have some fun with it and stuff. But because we got a lot more to cover, you know, in the semester, I'm looking at the clock ticking down. This is not the ideal solution for teaching, you know, because I really do prefer having you in the class with me. I can look over your shoulders and help you more one-on-one, but it is what we have. Okay. Come on, creative people out there. Questions. It doesn't have to be about the house at night or even the jazz festival. How have I been? Thank you very much for asking. No, I've been fine. I actually, 3 weeks ago, landed a new job. I don't talk about it much just for the simple reason that with the coronavirus, so many people are out of work. I didn't want people, you know, I feel like I'm rubbing in on the fact that I got lucky. But it's like eating up my daytimes at the moment. I'm very, very busy. Is Easy E something we'll get? Yeah, definitely. I'll be talking about the different keyframes and stuff coming up shortly. Is my job still hiring? No. Unfortunately, they need a network administrator for an aerospace corporation because they couldn't fly anybody out from the East Coast. So I am the man on the ground running around. The agreement I have with them is not to interfere with my teaching. So I'm not doing any late Monday nights or anything like that. Sorry, Max. No, I'm not. You know, unless you're a programmer, I don't think they're looking for anybody at the moment. I was lucky to get it what it was just because I knew somebody who was in the company and stuff. Unfortunately, no, I don't know of any companies looking for interns at the moment. I, you know, have been totally out of touch because most of the people I would get this information from are people on campus, because quite often corporations and companies looking for interns come to Santa Monica College because we have a fairly good reputation and stuff. And all the people who I would go to, the counselors and other people, I'm not seeing or talking to. Sorry, guys. Things are just weird right now, and I can't get the information that you would need for this sort of thing. Max, I can program written in English. I think they're looking more for JavaScripting, you know, and things like that than just plain English. Okay. Yeah, looking for work. That's the real challenge right at this moment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have any more questions, it's 9 o'clock. It's a little bit early, but not too bad. You know, reasonable. We've covered a lot of things in the evening. You know, you may want to go back over this material. Obviously, next week your Jazz Festival is due, and of course that means that next week I'm also handing out project number 4. Okay. So focus on project number 3, the Jazz Festival now, and don't worry about 4 or even the final project, project 5 yet. It's a little too early in the semester for that. So like I said, unless you guys got something, I think we can call it a night. Well, if you count the Jazz Festival, we have the Jazz Festival, project number 4, and then the final, which is project number 5. Okay. Yes, good night. I figured that's what you typed. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording for people.